Today on Merchants of Change, we talked to former national champion from University of Denver ice hockey, Andrew Thomas, who's currently the manager of sales and customer success for the elite market at HUDL, who sells performance analysis software to sports organizations all over the world. I'm J.R. Butler, co-founder of the Shift Group, and you're listening to Merchants of Change. This is a podcast about transferring the skills and behaviors we acquire as athletes into being a professional technology salesperson. Each week, we'll introduce you to a top performer who will help us understand how they became professional merchants of change. What's up, kid?
What's up, JR?
How you doing, buddy?
Good, man. You?
Good. I'm psyched to have you. I got you solo. John's out today. So everybody, we got Andrew Thomas. Tomer and I go way back, so this is going to be a really fun conversation. We've actually really never talked, Tomer, about your transition and about like your view on sales. So I'm going to be learning a lot, even though I know a lot about you. So I'd love to, I guess, just quick background, Tomer. Me and you met about like a decade ago, right?
At least, yeah.
Yeah. Through the small world of hockey, as all things, right?
Yeah, especially in the Boston and New England area. But knowing the Butler family, having grown up in New Hampshire, and watching Bobby, granted where he's a little bit younger than I, but hearing about Bobby through the years, and obviously yourself at Holy Cross, it was destined to happen. But always a pleasure with you and your family.
So I think that's a good place to start. You mentioned New Hampshire, right? And New Hampshire, as a kid from Central Mass, I always feel like the redheaded stepchild of the Boston area, right? Like kids from Boston think that if you go past 93, you're in the boondocks, right? I try to remind my friends that South Boston isn't the only town with triple deckers. What was it like growing up in New Hampshire playing sports, and like what's the culture like up there? How is it the same and different than down in Massachusetts?
Yeah, I'm sure there's a lot of similarities. Just the size is the huge difference. I grew up in a small town outside of Concord, and a few thousand people. There was 90 kids in my grade school class, and all the way through until I got to high school. So seasonality was a big thing in sports. You'd roll from the hockey rink right into baseball or lacrosse, and you'd go with kind of the same group of guys, and then the next season would roll over and you'd do the same thing. So for me personally, I think I was fortunate because my dad had a background in hockey. He was a goalie at Assumption College out in the Worcester area, and then he refereed at a really, really high level for a long time. And I was born in Wisconsin, lived there until 1990, so first 5 years of my life, and then we moved back to New England. But that was really my dad's like transition out of hockey and out of refereeing. He was doing NCAA national championships. He refereed in the Olympics, and did some old WHA games, back when there was other professional leagues other than just the NHL. But he really chose to take a different path and support his boys and their upbringing, and not being away every weekend. And I'm sure my mother had a big hand in that, of not wanting to spend too many more Saturday nights at the rink. But that was great. And my dad really introduced a different world outside of New Hampshire youth hockey, and I was able to make a transition down and play in the Boston Metropolitan League, which I'm sure you remember. And it opened my eyes to what competitive hockey was like at that age. And a lot of time in the car, commuting from New Hampshire down to Lowell or down to Marlborough, or down to the South Shore or something like that. But I was fortunate though, because I started to meet that elite group of hockey players at a pretty young age, and had some familiarities. So when the time came, it was a little bit easier to break into it. But I think that helped me long term, because I never, as much as I wanted to play college hockey, I wasn't dead set on playing in New England. I think I was considerate of any college hockey program that wanted to talk to me. But I also knew that there was just a lot of different environments out there that I could be successful in, and I'm sure other people can too.
Yeah, dude, I had no idea your dad was a ref.
Yeah.
My dad refs college hockey as well, and
Did he?
now
Yeah.
my brother Al does. And I didn't know he was a greyhound either. That's crazy.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
awesome.
Yeah, I think he holds some records as a goalie, and I think one of them is like highest save percentage, but the other is like most goals allowed in a college career. So some he's proud of, some he's not so proud of.
That's unreal.
Yeah.
Did you just play hockey? You were like a multi-sport athlete, right, in high school?
Yeah, I played baseball coming up, and then my brother started playing lacrosse and found some real quick success with it, as well as some other hockey guys that I knew that made the transition over. And I loved lacrosse. I mean, it was, at the time, we were a very athletic small school in New Hampshire, so we were competing for state championships every year. And I was kind of the opposite player in lacrosse that I was in hockey. At the time, held a few, points and goal records at Bow High School, which is, again, small school, but, something that was totally an aberration from what I was as a hockey player, just a strong skating, rugged defenseman. So it was great. It was my release away from hockey, being able to really stay in shape, with the amount that lacrosse requires of you. But it was what I did with my high school buddies, because at that point I was playing junior hockey, and it was a much more serious endeavor, even at the age of 15, 16. So lacrosse was definitely an escape at that point.
That's good. You got to stay connected with your high school buddies, even though you're playing in juniors. That's huge.
Exactly.
That's a game changer.
Yeah.
You mentioned it, like, growing up in Massachusetts, we're in like, a hockey hotbed with Hockey East, right? And like, that crew of guys that we all grew up with, it was like, you wanted to play in a bean pot. You wanted to play locally. You wanted to travel around kind of that Hockey East kind of factory, but you ended up, going to an unbelievable school, right? University of Denver. Well, how did you end up out there? Like, and what was it like playing in a different part of the country than, like, really most of all of our friends really ended up locally, where you were kind of out there in Colorado?
Yeah, it was a roundabout way. I think I had, to your point, just playing junior hockey in New England, playing for the New Hampshire Monarchs at the time. I just assumed Hockey East or an Ivy League school was kind of in my future. It was great because my dad had such a familiarity with college hockey. He would always just plant the seed in my ear that, there is life outside of Hockey East. And he had seen what Wisconsin looks like in North Dakota and Denver at the time. So like, he really understood, as great as Hockey East was, it's not the end all be all. So it was funny and I'm sure you remember these days, Worcester still holds a regional, an NCAA regional every year. You go down, you buy one ticket, you get to see two games. And I remember seeing Denver and Michigan play, and it was wild. I mean, men out there, full beards, and that always stuck in my mind and still did. So I knew that, again, not to be redundant, but there was life outside of Hockey East. And then my junior year of high school, I was drafted in the United States Hockey League, the USHL. And at the time, I knew I could have stayed local and, been comfortable and probably gotten to a place where I could, earn a Division I scholarship here in the East Coast. But I'd always played over my head. I'd always played with older guys, and I just wanted to see how I could do out in the Midwest against the best, North American players that, were age eligible before college. Landed in Waterloo, Iowa, and had a tremendous year. A lot of guys that ended up landing at UNH, and Pete MacArthur, Matt Fornatero, Mike Raja, Kevin Regan. I mean, the list goes on. Joe Pavelski, of all people, was our captain. So it was kind of a fairy tale year. We won the Clark Cup, which was the championship in the USHL that season, the playoff championship.
Wait, all those people you just mentioned were on your junior team?
Yeah, and there was
more. Are
you
kidding me?
Derek Whitmore. Oh man, I'm Jake Schwann.
You guys were a wagon.
Yeah,
dude.
we were, and we didn't know it. Like they had made a good run the year before. A lot of good players had left. Reed Cashman was there the year before I was, and he's now the coach up at Dartmouth, and it was just. It kind of came together. We were the 8th seed coming in, and ended up having just a great playoff run, and had some guys like Joe and Matt that carried us a lot of the way. But, early in that year, I started to get some sniffs, from some teams, but I figured I'd have to do a few years out there, do a postgraduate year and keep maturing to, at least that's what the Ivy League schools were telling me. And, Denver came and they said, hey, you're our only recruit for one spot. You're going to play all 4 years. You don't have to worry about sitting behind anybody. And it's a full scholarship opportunity. So took a visit, fell in love with the town, fell in love with the city, and the campus was great. The guys were terrific. And it just seems, it seemed like a really good fit. Should I probably have taken my time and done, all the visits I could have? Definitely. But I still don't regret the decision at all because, at the time I thought I missed my opportunity, right? Because I'm a senior in high school. I'm playing in Waterloo, and Denver goes and wins the national championship in Boston. And I'm like, well, there it goes. What team goes back to back, let alone wins it twice in 4 or 5 years? And then thankfully I fell into a great situation where I had a great class come in with me, and then had a lot of guys return, and we were able to do it again my freshman year. So lucky in a lot of senses. Really.
I just saw them play this year in Boston too.
Yeah.
That's unreal. I mean, it's great because like you got it out of the way. Then it's tough because like you're living up to that for the next 3 years, right?
100%. And it's kind of the expectation, right? Because you win 2 in a row. I was obviously on the back end of those 2, but you get a whole new recruiting class that's expecting to come in and do it again. And it's almost retraining them and breaking them down to, hey, every year is different. It's a marathon, and things aren't handed to you. But you're right. It's you climb the mountain, and then you realize how hard it really is to get up there again.
Yeah, but it's also like one thing Holy Cross, different level, like different type of background. But like when I came in freshman year, they were coming off going to a regional, which was just going to a regional
Huge.
for an Atlantic hockey team was a big deal. But one of the things that I appreciate that I think has really like set me up in my career is like understanding what a winning culture is, understanding accountability, teamwork, everybody playing a role. Like I imagine winning a national championship your freshman year really gave you a taste of like, all right, this is how a winning organization operates, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's sports or business.
I think the most, in thinking about this discussion, and something that I cherish and I probably don't give enough, thought to often, is that the senior class we had that year was a group of very much role players. And, they were older, they'd seen a lot, they'd been through a lot, they were very even keel. So knowing that they all filled a role and they were so consistent in their approach on a daily basis. And like you said, being in an elite organization, I mean, comes certain inherent traits of being an extremely hard worker, being highly, highly effective with your time, your organization. But then to take it further, it's just that consistency of breaking down long-term goals into really short-term, obstacles or short-term initiatives, I guess you could say. And that translates into any walk of life, because you can't, you can't climb a mountain by doing it all at once. You got to do it step by step, and, overcoming things as they present themselves. But yeah, it was just the consistency of that group. And I think their ability to communicate effectively in those environments when, an 18-year-old, I'm walking into a 10,000, seat stadium that's filled and loud. And it's, guys reminding me that it's just no different than practice. It's the same stuff we do every single day. It was a lesson that I got, very early on in my life that has proven true in every experience I've had.
Yeah. We didn't have that 18,000 person problem at Holy Cross, but I can relate.
Yeah. You just had it once in a while, or yeah.
So we talked about this at the beginning, Tom. I've known you a long time. You knew me back in the old days before I kind of got my act together a little bit with the drugs and the alcohol. And like one thing, I've always looked at you as like a kind of like an old soul, right? Like, like I looked at you, like even though we're friends, like as a somebody I looked up to as like a leader.
Appreciate that.
And like, you know, one thing that's like really unique about your college career is you were captain junior and senior year. Like, and I think a lot of that has to do with it, just like your personality. But like, what do you think? What do you think your teammates saw in you that like led to that captainship as a junior and then a senior?
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to think it's a sense of reliability. You know, it's people looked at me as like I said about the seniors when I was a freshman, it was, a really consistent presence, and expectations never really wavered. I think I was consistent in that. But the other piece too, and I think because it always in my mind and my heart always came from a place that was really genuine and caring, is that I really have a high emphasis on accountability, and that's for myself, but as well as the people around me. And I know full well, because I've operated and played and worked under leaders that weren't this way, but I've done the same for leaders that were this way, that are truly willing to do the hard work with you and empower the people around them to be successful. A lot of cliches there, but like at the end of the day, it's just I hope it was for my consistent approach to my daily preparation, but also just the high level of accountability that I had for myself, but also the people around me. And I think if it comes from a really genuine and honest place, it's easy to buy into that. It's the people that are feigning it. They're saying like, hey, this is the way it's got to be, but they don't embody that at all. It just makes it so, transparent and, unmotivating, or, it lacks motivation for the people around them. But to have somebody that's done it, that wants to keep doing it and does everything they can to do it at the highest level, that's an easy leader to get behind. And I know I've ironically fine-tuned it since then, because, as a college athlete, you remember, it's just, you're wild. Like, you're a wild man. You're just trying to, tackle the world every day you can. And, every loss you take like it's a bullet wound. But now being able to really focus that in my professional life, it's paid dividends.
I love it. I love it. Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a sense of professionalism a little bit, which is like, it's no wonder you went on and you went on after college hockey, you played professionally, and you bounced around a bit, right? Oh, yeah. East Coast, AHL, over in Europe. What are the biggest differences between the leagues, in your opinion, like across? Because we work with a lot of guys like you that played in multiple different leagues in all sports. Like, what do you see as the biggest difference?
It's interesting. Every league has its own reputation, but then it also has its own identity, right? At the time, the ECHL was pretty rough and tumble, but like you had some wild buildings that you'd play in. Johnstown, where they filmed Slapshot, and Reading and Elmira. I mean, just some hilarious experiences, looking back on it. But the American Hockey League is much more professional in certain ways, right? You got guys who are really teetering on the cusp of the NHL, and some of them are really frustrated to be there. So like you see a different dynamic in the locker room. In the ECHL, you're not getting paid much. You're really just living the dream, and you're trying to pursue the opportunity in any way that you can. In the American Hockey League, you have guys that are so close, they can taste it. And like the dynamic in the locker room is a little bit different. I know Bobby, experienced that a bit. And, I never cracked the NHL, but, had a lot of exposure to coaches and to athletes, that had lived both lives. So that was really cool for me. I mean, everything was so much sharper in the AHL, the play, the preparation, the overall skill set. But I loved my time and my teammates in the ECHL. Still some of my best friends to this day, because they're, just living the dream, trying to pursue pro hockey in any way they can. But Europe was, I'm so happy I did it, because it gives you an appreciation for, the game and what it's given you and what you've put into it, and the opportunity to see the world and live in a different environment. But you also, I think culturally, it shaped me a lot different, right? Where I went over for 2 years, living in a different place, in so many ways, I was the minority, only English speaking guy on my team my last year, and, or one of the only English speaking guys, definitely the only North American. But it's humbling. And then you come home and you see the privileges that we have here, and you see the life that we can lead here. And it's a tremendous experience for anyone that could ever do that, and whatever business that you're in. But yeah, Europe helped me find a little bit of my offensive side, which, I was never guilty of here in North America when I was playing, but it was great. It's certainly wouldn't trade any of the stops, even though there were many, for anything.
Absolutely. So you have a great career at Denver. You get to play, professional hockey all over the world. And the whole time you're like, I can't wait to get into tech sales, right?
Yeah,
like that's what you always wanted to do.
And I think this is probably true of a lot of athletes, and especially the college ones, because I think there's this misconception or a conception, whether it's true or not, that, players that come from Canada, that come from major junior hockey, that like hockey's their only avenue, right? It's their only thing that they can do with their lives. In college, college educated players that play pro hockey, they've got their degree, they're going to go do something else. And I think that almost works as a disservice to college guys, because it makes people think that we don't care as much, which was never the case. Right. But I did know I had a degree. I did know that it was depreciating every year that I was playing the game. So the last few years, I mean, honestly, of the 6 years that I played, probably the last 3, I had a little bird on my shoulder just chirping in my ear saying like, hey, what's next? What's next? What are you going to do? What are you going to do? And I think a big part of that, and it's funny, you mentioned at the beginning of this conversation how, we haven't talked too much. We've known each other for so long that we haven't talked too much about, my career and stuff like that. And I think that's a byproduct of how much I was trying to learn from you at the time too, because I was seeing what you were doing with your career, and seeing the success that you were having, and every chance I was getting, I was just trying to pick your brain and figure out, what goes into being successful in something else. And I took the roundabout way after the game. I stayed in hockey on a coaching staff, seeing if, maybe coaching was still in my blood, and figured out pretty quickly it wasn't. Met my girlfriend at the time, just before my last year, is now my wife, and, knew that, hey, I'd love to know what a Friday and a Saturday night looked like again. I'd love to settle down and be closer to home, to my family. So coming back to Boston was really the easiest decision I could make at the time, but the hardest decision was figuring out what I wanted to do. And we both know a lot of former hockey guys that are in the commercial construction world, and we're finding a lot of success there. And I said, hey, it's tangible. Boston's growing every day, and maybe I'll get into that. And did a few years in project management, and really learned what blue collar, and not that I was doing it by any means. I mean, I was a project manager at the time, but seeing blue collar work every day, helping open up job sites at 5:30 in the morning, and that was a humbling experience in and of itself. But tech sales was something that obviously I'd seen you be successful in, other people be successful in, but my fear was, and I think this is probably the same fear of a lot of people that are going to work with Shift, is that, hey, I don't want to start over. I don't want to go bang the phones, being 30 years old or 28 years old with a bunch of 21 or 22-year-olds. I'm too proud to do that. And I think the best advice that anyone ever gave me, and I heard it from a number of people, yourself included, is, don't cheat it. Like, don't do it. Don't skip a step. Make sure you get the foundation that you need. And it's ironic because I was interviewing at HUDL, back when I was working in commercial construction management, and I had no sales experience. I didn't really know what I was talking about on the phone. I didn't really understand how to answer any questions that were being asked of me. Went out, got 2 or 3 years of true foundational sales experience, and then I land back at HUDL, and I've been really successful for it. So as uncomfortable as it is, I'd encourage anybody just to don't cheat the system. Do it by the book, do it the right way, and you'll thank yourself in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, we talk a lot about, especially with the older guys like yourself that are like in their late 20s, early 30s, transitioning out of the game. Like, the reality is you got to kind of carry the water bottles again, right? Like that's kind of the euphemism that we use. And I think like, you'd be shocked now, like some of the comp plans for these BDR roles they're pretty close to six figures in a lot of cases. So it's like, you're not really taking a step back financially. Yes, you're going to be working with some younger people, but that should give you energy and enthusiasm more than anything else, because you're going to get the look earlier for that next promotion to account executive because of your maturity and life experience. So we just remind them of that. But hearing it from somebody other than me is super powerful. So thanks for mentioning that. Now, was it conversations with guys like me that like kind of got your ears perked up for sales? Like why was sales always something that you were like in the back of your head, like, okay, I think I could go in that direction someday after project management?
Yeah, it's funny, and I think my dad I think he'd admit to this, is that he was in sales. He sold abrasives, grinding wheels and diamond tools, and to manufacturing companies. And I think the running joke amongst my friends is like, "Hey, does your dad have a job? Like, does he work?" And all it was is, because he was able to take me to practice, he was able to, be at every game, and he was just a big part of my life in athletics. And I, so appreciative for that. But the ironic piece is, and looking back, is he was just really good at his job. Yeah, he had his book of business, and he was a great salesman. He maintained his relationships and was able to, really reap the benefits of that and leverage the flexibility that the role offered him. So I always, looked back, or now looking back, it seems kind of like a natural transition for me. But I think the biggest piece is working in construction, working, in the hockey world after playing, is there just wasn't a scoreboard, right? Like I couldn't judge myself against my peers. I didn't feel that I was being compensated for my effort because I just dumped myself into everything that I do professionally. So I wanted to see some, financial reward for that piece. So the scoreboard piece, I think, was a big motivator for it. And also that I just saw, the software industry in Boston was just taking such a skyrocketing, turn in the opportunities that were growing. And I said, hey, if I can go get the foundational knowledge now and do it quickly and efficiently, it's not going to take that long to get to the next place. And, now staying at a company for 4 or 5 years is almost a long time, and it's wild. And I think I'm a good example of kind of how you can, go place to place and get, reap the benefits of certain, company cultures and, training opportunities and things like that. But, finding a place like HUDL where it's allowed me to leverage that experience and grow into new roles has been really valuable.
Yeah, it's a different type of culture now. Like that 4 or 5 year kid is so rare, right? You're seeing a lot of like 1 to 2 to 3 year stints max, because there is so much opportunity now, right? Everything's being disrupted by software. You're seeing it in the sports world with companies like HUDL, and you're seeing it in healthcare, property, construction. I mean, there isn't an industry out there that isn't disrupted with software. So well said. And to your point, like you can learn to sell software in one space and use that to get into the space you ultimately want to get into, which is exactly what you did, right?
Yeah. And that's, I think, a connection of ours was my first business development manager, Kristen Raffi. And I showed up at Mendix, as a green 28, 29-year-old BDR. And, that week we were purchased by Siemens, like literally like the week I got there. So I was able to see what a small company being acquired by one of the biggest in the world, what that looks like on the office floor. And it was, I mean, not to be, overly dramatic, but it was like euphoric for the people that I saw that had stock and I know you've gone through this personally, like that just, it changes their lives. So seeing that was like, okay, there's the shot in the arm I need to go do this right. And through Siemens and Mendix, I was able to, get some really formal and intensive sales training that, to your point, is literally applicable in every technology market that you work in. The only thing that changes are the personas that maybe you're selling to and the things that they value. But the process and typically the typical objections and the issues or the obstacles that you face in sales cycles will be very, very similar regardless of what you're doing. And it's great too, because I think it afforded me a chance at HUDL to introduce new ideas to people that didn't have that, and even sales leaders who were really appreciative of it. So you're so right that if you find a place that can teach it to you the right way, it's just going to accelerate your growth so much in the long term.
Yeah, we talk like we have like client hiring partners in every industry, and what I tell our guys is like, listen, like, and girls is like, listen, the first job is it's not about your comp, it's not about it's not about the industry, the product, none of that necessarily matters. What matters is, are you going to get trained and developed, and do you have a good leader that can be a mentor? And it sounds like, obviously, I know Kristen, like someone like that taking you under their wing early days is critical. And it sounds like you kind of went in like knowing like, all right, I just want to ramp as fast as I can because I don't want to be a BDR forever. What are the ways, like, we have kids, a lot of kids that go into that BDR role with the goal of like, I just want to get to AE as fast as I can. Like, what are some ways that and tools that you use to get that ramp time accelerated?
Yeah, I think it's applying the work ethic that's necessary to be a high level athlete and just putting it on top of your day to day, because inherently, elite athletes are just going to try and outperform their peers. So like, that's your immediate leg up the day that you walk in the door. So like, just being confident to that and being reliant on that is super important, because it's easy, no matter who you are, no matter what athlete you are. If you're in a new environment, people aren't looking at you like, they're looking at you like everybody else. They're not looking at you like a former Division I or high level athlete. You're just another, butt in the seat. So what should be happening, kind of under the, or in your mind, or, internally at that time, is just knowing that, hey, I'm going to outwork everybody here. So relying on that's really, really important. I think the other piece too is just trying to understand what everybody in the business does and what the most successful people in those roles, like, what do they do? And can you learn from that? Can you take pieces that work really, really well? And in those conversations is like, hey, in your first week here, what didn't work? Like, what didn't work well? What should I just avoid? What should I not waste my time doing? Because time is of the essence, right? Like, in sport, you can dump yourself into it. You can in business as well, but you can only sell, so many hours a day. So making sure that you're making really efficient use of your time is super important too. But it's funny. It's a balancing act. Like, you want to ramp as quickly as you can, but you can't do it too fast. Like, you have to take your losses, and you have to remember that being a business development rep or, anything of the sort where you're doing cold calling, it is the hardest job in sales. Like, you're getting hung up on, you're pissing people off, you're catching them, at lunchtime, or, you just got to get creative and stay really, really even keel throughout the process. And I know a lot of teams adopt the phrase "trust the process," but it's true. Just have faith in yourself, and wins will come, and repetitions will yield higher performance.
Yep, perfect practice makes perfect. Absolutely. Who you've worked for a bunch of different people. Do you have like a mentor that stands out, and like the lessons that you took from them that like kind of you take with all the time?
Yeah, there's been I've only had a few stops, but there's been a lot of people. I mentioned Kristen. I mean, she's been just a kind of a sounding board for things that I've wanted to do in my career, changes that I've wanted to make, and I think she's quietly laid in advice without telling me what to do. And I've always really appreciated that about her, and what I consider now to be a friendship more than a mentor-mentee. But, senior sales leaders at Mendix, like Bill Fitzgerald, my God, he's seen it all, right? At EMC, IBM, and then, now he's at Google. He's seen a lot of stuff, and just a true Boston sports guy. Like, cut from the cloth that we've always known, and he's been tremendously successful. And then reps at Mendix like oh God, Tom Gallagher, played hockey at Providence, Brandon
Yeah.
Seppa,
Yeah.
who just, I mean, seeing true enterprise sales in a really complex environment, and just the way that they carried themselves through those conversations was always really helpful for me. And then, jumping to a startup like Fair Market with Kevin Frechette, Tarek, Mike, I mean, guys that were younger than me. And again, like just still being in that environment, but learning every single day, and really seeing like what sourcing all the way to closing, and certainly didn't have that many closes in my time there, but, but running the whole deal cycle and being given that opportunity and afforded it, I'm really appreciative of. And now working with people here at HUDL that, have been in the sports technology industry for 20 years. And when we sell on a global footprint, right, to Manchester United and Chelsea, and I'm right down the street from UNC and Duke, so it's been a wild ride so far, but it's because of all the people that have allowed me the opportunities and have given me the advice that I've needed.
I love the idea of getting started in your career selling like a very disruptive, unbudgeted software where your competition is business as usual, because that is the hardest thing to sell in the world, right? I did 2 years as a CRO in low code, and I know exactly what you're talking about when it comes to that complex environment, right? You're basically trying to convince people to do things differently than they have for the last 50 years. It's hard, but it's so good. It's such a good foundation to build upon as you kind of grow in your career. So yeah, I can totally appreciate that.
It teaches you to push towards like true value and, time,
yes,
and things that you can touch and see, rather than features and functionality, which I know is just the biggest misstep of so many reps out there. But yeah, it's a great point.
Now that leadership kind of background has also played into your sales career. You made a switch that I made. I made it when I was like a little bit younger at like 28, but you did it recently, going from, that individual contributor to building and running a team. What was that adjustment like for you? And like, where did you see like your biggest, even as a natural born leader, like where were there gaps in your skill set that you had to beef up?
Yeah, there's a lot of gaps. I think the people side came really easy to me. Like, I think, moving from, being part of a pod where, shoulder to shoulder with all my colleagues to, and all my peers, to then being the manager of that pod was, for some, I think could be a really strange transition, but I tried my best to be as transparent as I could, and, just tell them that, hey, things are pretty much status quo. I'm just going to be, helping you guys now rather than working alongside you and really being more of a part of your day to day. So the transition was pretty easy. I think where I really had to ramp up and spend a lot of nights and a lot of weekends was just the data piece. It's forecasting. It's, things that really matter to senior leadership. And as a company that's, now partnered with private equity, that's, in a really unique position of growth right now, I think we're really focused on that stuff. But intrinsically, what I look back on, and I think was the hardest part for me, and probably a lot of the people that Shift's going to work with, and their hardest adjustment is just going to be helping former athletes, and we attract a lot of them through the transition of leaving sport and coming into business, because it's tough. I mean, I don't want to sugarcoat it. Like, I think something I was thinking about leading up to this is that something I wish I had more than just a few friends like yourself that had gone through it is a community of people that can help you through it, and that you can share frustrations and sadness, right? Like, you're redefining yourself. It can be really tough. And I think people think it's like, all right, it's going to be a few weeks of adjustment. It's years. Like, I'm just watching NHL games like regularly again. And, cause now it's just all kids. I don't have to worry about seeing, a lot of my former teammates. There's still some, but it doesn't sting as much anymore. But it takes years. And I think being really vocal about it, and, for me now in a management role, having people on my team that are going through it or have gone through it, hopefully they can look to me as somebody that they can at least communicate with and share that struggle with.
Yeah. And like, I don't know how you think about it, but like when I think about leading teams, I look at it like a lot of people are like, all right, this is the boss and these are the people that work for the boss. For me, as a great leader, you work for your team, right? Like your job is to make them successful. Like when I think of mediocre sales leadership, I think of the people that they care about their number, and if they hit their number, they had a good year. But like that's not really what great leadership is. Is like, hey, I work for you, and I'm not successful unless you're successful. Is that kind of like, is that your view on like how you're running your teams now?
Yeah, servant leadership. I mean, it's, I think the phrase of the book is, leaders eat last. And I'm a huge believer in my current manager, our director of North American sales. He enlightened me during my interview process of, hey, there's enabling and then there's empowering. And are you going to be an enabler or are you going to empower people? And like that to me, and understanding the differentiation between, hey, I'm going to do the job for you, or I'm going to give you the skills and the resources and the guidance to go do it yourself. There's a huge difference, and it results in dollars and cents in our business. But I'm really open with my team of, hey, I want to know what your professional aspirations are. I want to know what your personal aspirations are. And I want to help you get there. And, if it's giving you the skill set and the experience here to go be really, really successful somewhere else, then I'm going to be your biggest advocate. Like, I'm never going to hold you back from an opportunity. Because that's what I always appreciated out of leaders was, hey, we want to move you on. We want you to be successful here. We want you to help us win here. And then we want you to go do stuff that's going to challenge you long term and be successful for you and your career growth. So, look for leaders like that. Never look for, to your point, it's, if you get somebody that's worried about a number and then pushes you out in the cold and to go get that number, that's, have faith in yourself, but that's not the right place to be.
Yeah, we try to avoid that type of culture with any company that we work with. So I can't agree more. It's so important. Leadership is the most important thing to look for in your first company, especially. All right, last couple questions, buddy. Thank you for sticking it out with us.
No, it's been a pleasure.
So this one, we ask everybody this: most memorable commission check and what you did with the cash.
Jeez. Geez. Last August, a prominent ACC school, and the negotiation was a beast. The negotiation took 3 months. I was dealing with a true procurement person that didn't understand the value of any of our products,
Right.
Wasn't listening to the users, wasn't, we buying everywhere except this one person that was just
wanted their pound of flesh.
Exactly. Was, and for them, it's a sport. For them, they're not getting emotional. For me, it's a huge change in my annual income, and
it's diapers, dude.
It's diapers, it's formulas, it's all that. But we made it through, and it was the largest deal in the NCAA that year. And, it was the biggest trench battle I've had in sales, and to figure out a way for us to both walk away feeling like we won, I think was my biggest, the thing I hung my hat on. Bought a new driver, and I named it after the procurement guy. So, so it worked out well. It worked out well. And the rest goes into the diaper fund. So
you should be naming the golf ball after the procurement guy when you swing, dude. Exactly. So you swing a little harder.
Yeah, exactly. No, yeah, you remember the big wins, but you also remember the losses here and there. So.
Totally. That's where you learn more, for sure. 100%. So this one I kind of stole from my dad. My dad used to tell us when we were growing up, hey, listen, a lot of people play hockey, but there's not a lot of hockey players, right? There's a difference between, and I think in any career that you could say that, right? A lot of people sell software, but not a lot of people are software sales professionals, right? So like, we think the highest praise you can give a salesperson is calling them a pro. So what is, in sales specifically, what does being a pro mean to you?
Elite communication. That's to me, because it's something that I've really tried to focus on, of being very measured in my words and very thoughtful of how you say things and the environment that you say them in. And I think it trickles into so many, external parts of not only your personal and professional life, but in a deal, if you come across and hopefully you genuinely feel like you care about the customer and you care about the process and the people that are involved in it. But if your communication is very, very pointed, direct, clear, and honest, I mean, it's really hard to lose. You may lose that deal, but people will never forget the way that you treated them. They're never going to forget the experience that they had with you. So just being an elite communicator, I think, will serve you so well in your professional life, because again, the people that are going to be working with Shift are so already above and beyond the norm in this industry with a lot of the intangibles, that if you can work on your communication, if you can work on your messaging, it's just going to skyrocket you to the next level. And that's something that I've always appreciated of pros like yourself and other people that we've known, is like they can inspire with off the cuff sentences, and they can see 4 or 5 steps down the road because of their experience, and they can communicate that to people that haven't been in that position. All these things add up to just a much higher likelihood of success, in everything you put your mind to.
Dude, I love that answer. We haven't gotten that one before, but it's so true. That is the differentiator for success. A lot of the times is how you communicate, and just being thoughtful and careful in how you communicate. That was awesome. Dude, unreal conversation, Tomer. Thank you so much, buddy. I really appreciate it. It's good to see you. Hopefully I get to see that procurement driver in action this summer, buddy.
Yeah, exactly. That'd be great. My treat.
All right, buddy. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, fellas.
This wraps up this episode of Merchants of Change. If you enjoyed this episode, the most meaningful way to say thanks is to submit a review wherever you listen to podcasts. If you're interested in working with us, please come find us at www.shiftgroup.io.